Hey y'all, Big Tim here. Thanks for tuning in for the final episode of the Truth Behind the Trophy series for this year. Hopefully we'll have some more coming up for you. I actually know of a couple that I'm going to do for next year, but I don't know that I'm going to do 12. But anyway, when we last left off, we were at Okeechobee and I had just finished #1 for the state of Kentucky, which qualified me to advance to the BassNation Championship, which was on Lake Wheeler in North Alabama. What was really cool about this tournament was the fact that, the Southern Divisional wrapped up fairly early in the season. And we knew fairly early that the BassNation Championship was going to be held on Wheeler. And it's only, I think it's like 6 hours from the house. So I had planned to spend every weekend that I could, once it was announced, down at Lake Wheeler up until the off-limits period. So I do think the off-limits period was a month before the tournament. But before that, the whole month of August, I was spending down at Lake Wheeler, and a lot of September. I think I went 5 consecutive weekends, maybe 6. Just bam, bam, bam. I had different people with me each time. Dad went once or twice. Lori went with me a couple times, and a friend of mine named Matt went with me, and really had a lot of time to spend down there. And I spend a lot of time all over the whole lake. I looked basically from one end to the other. I was from the Guntersville Dam all the way down to the Wheeler Dam. I looked the whole lake. Pretty much went into every creek and explored everything I possibly could. I wanted to have a really good idea. I wanted to put my time in for this tournament. I wanted to make sure I didn't leave any stone uncovered. So, we checked a lot of different things. One of the things about it, I stayed in an old flea bag motel in Athens, Alabama. Athens seemed to afford me the more, direct approach. There was a particular ramp that I enjoyed putting in when I was working downriver, and then it also gave me an availability to work upriver, if I wanted to go up to Huntsville. So, the lake is a really big lake. Athens just seemed to be a good place for me to headquarter. The tournament was going out in Decatur. They've got a really big, huge ramp there, and it's a great ramp. It really is. The city of Decatur really does a good job with hosting a big tournament like that. But for me, the cheaper hotels were in Athens, and it just suited my needs a little better. So I stayed in Athens a lot. And I actually made friends with a fellow who now fishes Elite Series. I'm not going to mention his name because I'm not a name dropper. Try not to be. But made friends with him on one of the practice days. We'd go out to dinner, different things like that. Lori seemed to really enjoy his company. And then when I went back with Matt, we all got along well. So we had a really good time together. And still, if I talk to him now, I know he's called me in the past asking me about Kentucky Lake, which I by no means am an expert, but I guess I have a little bit more experience than he does, considering he lives a couple thousand miles away. But that's one of the things about the tournament. You get to make some friends from all over the place. And that was really cool. And like I said, Decatur really does it nice. They took the ladies out, the wives of the anglers. They took them on a tour of all the historic buildings that are in Decatur and stuff like that. So, if you ever get an opportunity, if you ever make the BassNation Championship, make sure you take every opportunity to do everything that Bass and the local community provides for you, because they really do a great show. And that's what this tournament is. It's a show. And I learned a lot from it. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But going back to the practice there, like I said, I spent times on each end of the lake. I was everywhere and in between. So I never really got on much. I caught a couple really nice fish down toward the dam. I think it's called Elk Creek, something like that. I spent a lot of time in there, and I really liked the way it looked. There were a lot of stumps, a lot of places to flip. Never really did well. I had one day that I did pretty decent, caught some really nice fish. early in my practice. Later on, again in the practice, I caught them in a different spot in Elk River, but Elk River was one of my key areas. So a couple of the other times that I went, like I said, up to the Guntersville Dam. You know, you'd been hearing about guys catching a bunch of fish on the Alabama rig, rolling it through the current. And we fished a lot of current breaks and everything else. Now, granted, I'm practicing in August and September. They are drawing current for electricity, but it's not probably as intense as the current needs to be. So, you know, we caught a couple fish up there, but nothing to write home about. It definitely wasn't worth the long drive to make it up there, in my opinion. Another place we found some lily pad fields. That was really cool. Dad actually waxed my butt with a spinnerbait in the lily pads. I was trying to throw a frog, and here he's throwing a spinnerbait in there and just waylaid him. So he was having a good time there. But all told, practice really didn't do much for me until the very final practice. FLW had a tournament. I think it was the FLW series. Mark Rose actually won the tournament. But the second place angler, I think his name was Nick Blake or Blake Nick or something like that. He was fishing an area that I had kind of recognized from the times I was down there practicing before. So he did real well. So I wanted to go investigate that area a little bit more thoroughly. And when I did, I went with my friend Matt, and I found what I thought was the mother lode. We sat on one spot, well, a series of spots. And basically, it was a bunch of brush piles on one point. And man, we set the hook on probably 20 or 30 keepers one day, and I said, this is it. You know, if they're still here in a month, this is the spot. This is going to be phenomenal. So I had a couple other places that Matt and I fished, and I actually did catch a 5-pounder, which is kind of a rarity from what I understand for Wheeler. And that was also up in Elk Creek. So these two spots are fairly close together. So I really thought I had a pretty good game plan. So when practice comes around, I'm not even going to go to my primary spot or my secondary spot. I'm not even going to do it. At least until the final day. I want to see if anything's going on. Because first off, I don't want to show anybody. And secondly, you know, I know what it is. I don't need to go experiment with it. I don't need to go see if they're there every day. I just want to check it the last day. So we had 3 official days of practice. And on the first 2, I scrambled around trying to stay toward the mid to lower end of the lake. That way, if something were to happen with my primary location, at least I could scramble around and find something else. And I found some places that I thought would be good areas. You know, I caught a few fish here and there. Nothing great, but I had a few areas that at least I felt confident that if I needed to go catch a keeper or two, I could. One area was a little, I guess it was an old creek channel that's kind of separated from the river channel, and has a bunch of docks on it on kind of a bluff. And of course, that's right up my alley. I could flip those docks all day long. And another one of the areas was a main river channel swing. And it was good. And I actually caught like a 3.5-pound smallmouth off of it and a couple other keepers. So I felt like I had a pretty good idea. So the final day of practice, I do finally go and check my little spot. And sure enough, I get a couple bites and shake them off because, man, I am not going to set hook on these fish. I want them for the tournament. And I just shook them off. You know, I know they're there. I'm good. I only needed 2 bites to tell me that there were fish there. So I picked up and left and went and looked at my other areas. Now, when I went to look at the other areas, I didn't even pick up a rod. I just went to look at them, see what the water level looked like, and just idle over them and double check them. Everything looked good. Everything looked great. So, first day of the tournament. Now, the way they do the tournament here, you had an option. You could use your own boat, or you could use one that was provided by Bass. I felt that I would be more comfortable in my own boat, knowing where everything is and how everything operates. I think that would, be the best thing to do. So I took my own boat. Now, you take your own boat down there and drop it off. It goes in a boatyard. After that, you never touch the hitch. You never do the lower unit. You don't take off any of the straps or anything like that. It's all done for you. I mean, it's a big deal. It's a show. That kind of messes with my routine. I've got a routine about doing these things. But, you get into the lot early in the morning and you have to wait for BASS comes around with Toyota trucks, that's who sponsored it, and they would come around and pick up each boat. They had probably 5 trucks to do this. So you have to be patient, you have to wait your turn, and this is where time management comes into play. Because if you have a late boat number, you have to be in your boat at a certain time because everybody rides a bus from the hotel to the boatyard. Once you get there, it's all about time management. You can retie whatever you need to do, check everything. You don't have to mess with oil and gas because that's already provided for you. Bass takes care of that too. But your rods, your reels, stuff like that, graphs, whatever, that's when you're checking on that. I had a pretty early boat number. I can't remember. It was somewhere between 13 and 18. I honestly, I want to say it was boat number 13, but I can't remember. But anyway, I had a fairly early boat number. So I thought, man, this is going to be great. I'm going to buzz down to my spot and catch a limit real quick and then just go goof off the rest of the day. So to drive from Decatur down to this spot is probably, I'm guessing, about 20 miles. The whole time I'm excited. The bugs are pelting me in the face, which they've got some giant mosquitoes down there. I mean, they're huge. And this was, I think it was either late October or early November. I think it was early November. Those mosquitoes were just pelting all over me. But I'm excited anyway. I don't care. I'm going to go to the spot and I'm going to whack them. So as I'm getting closer to my spot, looks like somebody's sitting pretty close. I'm getting closer and I'm getting closer, and sure enough, there's 2 boats sitting literally on my spot. I mean, these guys couldn't have been more than a foot and a half off of my particular waypoint. They were right on my spot. Guess what? Wasn't my spot. It's evidently a pretty well-known community hole, which I didn't know about. But, the whole time I was practicing, I never saw anybody practicing there. Funny thing is, I never saw anybody fishing Lake Wheeler at all. All the 6 trips that I was there, 5 or 6, whatever it was, all the trips that I was there, I think we saw a total of maybe a half a dozen of boats, and maybe only 3 of those were fishing boats. The lake was deserted when I was there practicing. So, here are these 2 guys, and the one guy was actually boat number 1, so he'd been there for a couple minutes. The other guy was, just about 4 or 5 boats in front of me. So I was quite shocked. I was spun out. I didn't know what to do. So I just kind of hung close, and these guys, they stayed on it for quite a while. And I said, okay, I'm going to scrap it. I'm going to go to my secondary spot. So I double back around and go up the Elk River. It's not too far. It's maybe only 7 miles, something like that. I get up there and I go to my secondary spot, which is pretty good. Like I said, I caught a 5-pounder there, caught a few other fish, feeling good about that. And when I get there, there's a guy sitting right on that spot. Now, this isn't one of my tournament guys. This is actually a crappie fisherman who has like dozens of rods out everywhere. I know I don't have a chance to fish this bank because he's got rods literally everywhere. So that was pretty depressing, and, I was, again, kind of spun out, but probably about another 250 yards down the bank, I had another area that I had done okay in. So I go there. Sure enough, another crappie fisherman. Got rods everywhere. And I tell you that, like I said, during the practice, I never saw hardly any fishing boats in the 6 weeks I was there. Now, granted, it's August and September, it's hot, but we didn't even see pleasure boats. You know, there weren't people water skiing, there weren't jet skiers, just wasn't happening. And I always figured, well, people aren't coming to fish Wheeler because they can drop down below and fish Pickwick, or they can go up and fish Guntersville. But I was told later by somebody that would probably know that whenever Bass advertises that they're going to be someplace, people love to come and be part of the fray. They want to be able to say, well, the winner only had however many pounds and I had however many plus two. You know, they just loved it, the brag factor. So I was really spun out with, you know, all my areas being taken. But I was able to run around and scramble and catch a limit that weighed a whopping 8 pounds. You know, you had a 12-inch limit, so I went and caught a limit of 12 inches. That's all I could muster, and they weighed 8 pounds. So was feeling pretty bad about that. But on the second day, those two guys that were ahead of me, sitting on that spot, I had a better boat number than they did. So I thought I would get there first. So I'm buzzing down there and trying to get there. Well, one of the other boys either took some shortcuts, had a much faster boat than me, because when I got there, that sucker, he was only like 4 boats behind me. He was already sitting there. And then here come the first boat. I thought, well, what am I going to do here now? So I went ahead and pulled up there and asked the one guy if he minded if I fished with him a little bit. He says, no, I saw you here in practice. I know you were here. He says, in fact, I stayed close enough to this area to make sure that I was going to have it to myself. When I saw you pull up on it, I was like, oh, no. So he goes on to tell me that after I pulled off of it, a local came over there and just waylaid the fish. He said he must have caught 15 to 20 keepers and just kept catching them. And he said that really aggravated him. And of course, once I heard, that kind of aggravated me. But we sat there and fished for about an hour, maybe 2, and chit-chatted back and forth. He was a really nice guy, younger guy. I think he was from Oklahoma, but fishing for Kansas. I can't remember his name, but really, really nice guy. And he decided, well, they're not here, so he's going to leave. He left, and I stayed at it for a little longer. And the guy that was boat number 1 the first day that was also fishing that spot, he was stayed real close too. And I finally pitched in and threw a little shaky head and set the hook and came up with a little keeper. And that seemed to fire up the guy that was boat number 1, and he got over there and wanted to fish it with me. And like I said, I didn't have a problem. It wasn't my spot. The problem was he wanted to fish from a different angle than what I was. You know, I always believed that you want to cast up current and let your bait come down. And he was almost casting across my line. And I was like, dude, come over here and we'll just rub rail to rub rail. We'll both cast upstream. We'll both have an opportunity to catch some fish. But little we know, the hole pretty much dried up. I think I caught 2 little 12-inchers out of there, and that was it. So I bailed on that, went and scrambled again, went back to my secondary spot. There's my crappie fisherman on number 2 and number 3. So again, I was forced to scramble. Again, I came in with a 5-fish limit that weighed a whopping 8 pounds. But I did catch a limit. So overnight on the second day, we had some major storms, cold front blowing in. I'd been fishing in just a t-shirt and jeans. Might have even had shorts on because it was warm. But on day 3, when we got up, it was a lot colder. Major cold front rolled through. The wind was howling. And I expected it to get a little cooler, but I didn't expect it to get that cold that quickly. And it did. It got really, really cold. So you could look out on the lake from the ramp there, and you could see the big waves rolling. And I'm thinking, do I really want to waste the time to drive all the way down to that spot with the other two guys are going to be sitting there? The crappie fishermen's probably going to be there too. I'm going to try this other little spot that I found in practice, and who knows, maybe something good will happen. So they come around, they hook up my boat, dump it in, and I go to turn the key over or push the button, because it's the Triton. It's got a push button start. Nothing's happening. I thought, what is going on here? Nothing's happening. So I holler for a maintenance guy. Maintenance guy comes over. First thing he's asking me is my kill switch. Well, yeah, my kill switch is in because this thing isn't even turning over. If you don't have your kill switch on, it at least turn over, but it wasn't even doing that. And I couldn't figure it out. Come to find out that the guy that comes around to put gas in the boat had turned the key off. There's a key that's inside the console, and I generally leave that key on all the time because I just use the push start. And he turned that key off. And like I said, I always leave that key on. I had no idea. So we finally got that disaster averted. And I headed out, went to that little spot where we had the secondary creek right off the main river channel with all the docks. And let me tell you, there were a lot of fish there. I probably caught 25 to 30 keepers that day. The problem was I couldn't get anything over 1.5 pounds. I caught them on everything I wanted to throw. I caught them on brush hog. I caught them on crankbaits. I even pulled out a big crankbait and it still was only catching the small fish. But, I really didn't have much else to do. Didn't want to get out and fight in that wind. And like I said, yeah, I was pretty dejected anyway. I really, at the time I remember talking to another friend of mine who fishes for another state. And our wives became pretty good friends. But I was talking to him and he was like, hey man, you still got an opportunity. And I didn't think I did have an opportunity because at that point I figured I would have had to have 24 pounds. And I did not think the lake was capable of turning out 24 pounds. So I really didn't think I had an opportunity to make a comeback. The winner of the tournament was a fellow from Indiana. His name is Mark Dove. And he's a really good guy. He fishes a lot of the local river tournaments here. But he ended up winning the tournament. He did catch a 20-pound bag the final day. My understanding was he caught the majority of them on a topwater spook. But like I said, I didn't think the lake was capable of turning out a 20-pound limit at that time. And I didn't try a spook. I tried a lot of subsurface baits. I don't know how he was getting bit on that spook, the way the wind was blowing, the way the waves were going. He had to find a really isolated spot from the wind. But Mark did phenomenally well. My buddy that my wife and I became good friends with, he ended up second. And I think he caught a 17-pound limit. Now, granted, like I said, I still would have needed at least 24 to overcome the deficit that I put myself in. So I didn't feel too bad about my overall finish. I was right in the middle of the pack. I fished for 3 days and caught, like 24 pounds, somewhere around in there, had roughly 8 pounds a day. And not great, not bad, but solid considering what I'd had to go through with, people being on spots and everything else. All my practice really went out the window. But it was a fun trip. Now, talking about time management, one of the things I learned is if you're going to go to the BassNation Championship, time management is your buddy, your friend. Now, I've always been all about time management. I want to try to see how many different things I can do at once and do them effectively, obviously. And that's key there because, like I said, you're in that boatyard. You have to all enter at the same time. You all have to exit at the same time. So I would see a lot of guys when they pulled up to the dock waiting to get their boats pulled out. I would see guys sitting there just chit-chatting. Meanwhile, here I am tied, to the dock waiting for my boat, and I'm tying my lures and everything else, getting everything prepared. Once we got the boat dropped and on dry land, I was free to go. I went with Lori to hang out for a little bit, had a drink. Now, like I said, we all had to ride the bus together to get back to the hotel, but at least I didn't have to scramble. So if you were the last boat out, man, you didn't have a lot of time to tie your stuff up. So it was to your benefit to make sure that you knew how to manage your time better. So my advice to anybody that goes to the national championship, learn time management. Don't just sit around idle if you're waiting to be pulled out of the water, be put in the water, whatever else. But overall, it's one of the greatest experiences for both Lori and myself. We really enjoyed it. We made some good friends. It has been a highlight of my life. I'm really thrilled that I made the BassNation National Championship. That was a ton of fun. Sure, I would have liked to have went to the Classic. If I'd have been the #1 guy for the Southern region, I would have went to the Classic. So that's how we're going to wrap up this video series. I hope you have enjoyed it. I've told a lot of people what made me want to do this Truth Behind the Trophy series is when I was a kid, when I'd go fishing with my dad, we all camped back in the day. And in the evenings, we'd all sit around a campfire, and I would just love to sit and listen to the old guys tell stories. And I really love that. And you can learn a lot. If you sit and listen, you can learn a lot of little tidbits here and tidbit there. It's not 100% information about how to fish, but you can pick up some things. And that's one thing I always thought I was good at. Keeping my mouth shut, keep my ears open, and listening. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. We'll probably, like I said, do some more next year. I know I've already got one that we're going to do. So like I said, we'll probably only do 8 next year. But we got to do something through the winter. But stay tuned. We've got a lot more stuff coming up for you. We got a lot of trips that we're thinking about. Hopefully we can get that deal where we have the old school versus new school. And we're going to have Andrew and, of course, Mason. And we're just going to have a lot of fun this year. So be sure to check it out. But until next time, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.